Hello and welcome to Find Your Freedom, a podcast dedicated to helping you truly find freedom in all aspects of life. Join your hosts and their expert guests as they share practical tips and strategies for finding more freedom in your life. It's time to take control of your life and create the future you want. Let's find your freedom. Here are your hosts, Lenny the Boss and Omid Rad Investor.
Boom, 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 man. We are back for another episode at Find Your Freedom. We have an awesome guest, but before we go there, we always want to help you out. We always want to make sure that we give you what you need to succeed out here in the real world. So Omid and I put together a special freedom kit right for you. It's downloadable. You can go to www.findyourfreedomrei.com/freedom kit. Once again, findyourfreedomrei.com/freedom kit. All right, this next guest is a good friend of ours. You're going to love this show. So I advise you to pull over. I advise you to sit there and stop pumping your weights or doing what you're doing because you're going to want to take in everything. This guy right here, man, got a tech background, engineer. All right, man, 6 figures in 6 months. Can't wait to jump into that on how he paid off $147,000 in student loans in 14 months. How did he do that? So we're going to jump into all that. With that being said, bringing in my guy, which is going to be your guy, Vinny. What's up, my brother?
Yo. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. I love that energy, Lenny. My goodness.
Absolutely. So, Vinny, before we jump into some fantasticness, right, give the listeners just a little bit of your background and who you are.
For sure. So, hey, everyone. My name is Vinci Sevilla, married, father of 1, living in Southern California. Currently have a W-2 working for the energy industry. Got a background in tech and engineering and business management, as Lenny was mentioning earlier. And let's see here. I guess I started my real estate journey back in 2015, 23 years old, with a house hack. And back then, I didn't even know house hack was a terminology. Knew nothing about real estate investing. All I knew was I rent one room and rent out the other rooms, and they helped me pay for my mortgage. That was really it. Yeah, and then I guess 2 years later, I finally got into real estate investing. Investment out of Chicago. Started with long-term rentals. And then shortly after that, a couple other things happened. But in 2021 is when we started our own short-term rental business. And then from there, things just took off. And that's where you get the whole 6 figures in 6 months. And we were extremely excited about that and extremely fortunate to have, some great people we got to connect with and help us kind of like show the way. And a lot of lessons learned from there, but at the same time, now trying to give back and help other people.
Dude, I love that. I mean, I love your story. And, I feel like we grew up in similar areas. We kind of had like a similar path. I started off actually house hacking myself with my wife. We pretty much house hacked and back then there was no term for house hacking. It was just,
that's right.
Hey, this is our travel money. We're just making extra money and saving it so we can travel, and that was part of our travel budget. But I love kind of digging into the story. Maybe we can kind of get into like the head of like as far as your your background on your mindset and your work ethic, because I think maybe get into that a little bit and how you've been able to accomplish a lot of things in such a short period, because you're a very young guy and you've accomplished a lot of things, but what's guided you to I guess the path that you've had.
Oh man, let's see. I guess we can start off with first being an immigrant. I was born in the Philippines, and then coming here to the USA with my family was scary. Like I came here at a young age. The future was unknown, and my family and I we hustled to survive. Family of 6 living in a 400 square foot apartment. Okay, and drumming up the most random businesses, right, to put food on the table. It's very, very humbling, and the kind of businesses that my family and I would do, like selling though you can't make international calls. This is before the internet, obviously. You had to use like these cards to go ahead and like you load it with money, and then you can make like select calls to the Philippines or to like other countries and whatnot. So my mom was selling those things. My dad and my brothers and I, we had a water delivery business. So like, those big 5-gallon water like bottles. We would go around. My dad bought this like water truck, and then we would go around. I swear, like I think it was in elementary or middle school, knocking on doors during the summer, right around Bellflower, right, Compton, LA, Lakewood, and just like knocking on doors and asking like, hey, it's hot out there. You guys want some water, delivered to you? Showing them like the different pH levels of the water they may be drinking from their hose or their tap water compared to our water, and then going out to a water wholesale distributor, filling up those 5-gallon bottles with my brother every week, right after school, and then going with my dad and delivering them, making those sales. I don't know. They used me maybe as a like cute little like kid to try to like get some sales and whatnot. I don't know. I don't even remember if I made any. All I knew was that my dad taught me how to like, talk to people and then like, try to make a sale and then go from there. And anyway, I think some of those things kind of like contributed to my personality and my mindset, right? Because there's this like assumed obligation that like, hey man, if you're gonna be here in the US of A, you kind of have to make it as an immigrant, right? Like there's no other option, all right? And someone once told me like, hey, in order for you to make it here in the US, you got to buy property. And so in my mind, ever since going through like high school, going through college, I was like, all right, I got to buy a property. And then someone else told me, well, in order for you to buy a house, you got to have 2 years tax return. So I'm like, all right, graduated at 21 college. 2 years later, exactly at 23, I bought that first house hack. Yeah.
Oh no, that's great, man. That's great. First and foremost, I can relate because I'm a family of 10. All right. So, my mother had 10 kids. We lived in a row home, right? 3-bedroom, 1 bathroom, and not that big. So I get it when you're talking about small quarters, there.
Cat,
man.
for sure. I don't know if I use that right.
Run up. Inside joke, right? So, I think it's really cool, how you was raised, right? Because, your parents was sitting there, trying and showing you, different business models and the way to make it. And also what I heard you said is you're a pretty good listener, right? Because you kept saying, hey, someone said, hey, to make it here, you got to buy some real estate, right? Then you said, I had that in your mind. Say, okay, cool, perfect. All right, so now you went on ahead and you said, okay, well, now I'm ready to buy some real estate. They said, well, you got to have 2 years of tax returns. So you went out, you got a job. How important is it to sit there and I'm not sure if this was like a mentor that was telling you this or if this was just a good group of people and Cash you was around, but how important is it to be in the right circle to sit there and provide you with that type of information so you can go ahead and do what you need to do to take action and make it happen?
It's absolutely crucial, and I don't even recall if it was an actual person who said that to me. I think maybe Ask Jeeves, before Google was around, I kind of just typed it in there like, hey, how do I buy a house or like, what to do and stuff. But early on, I'm big on reading and educating yourself first and foremost. I think one of the first steps you need to take is educating yourself, right? Education in the things unknown, and I dived into books, dived into podcasts, dived into, surrounding myself with people who I'm not able to speak to them or converse with them, and back then, Instagram wasn't even around, but just being able to immerse myself with other people through books and using them as my mentors, listening to YouTube and Bigger Pockets podcasts to like really immerse myself. I think it's absolutely crucial to do so. So even if you may not have someone physically there to help you out. I think taking that first step and educating yourself in any means necessary is crucial. Now, step number 2 though is then taking action, right? Because with that education comes awareness, and with awareness to now realize like, hey, you're changing your mentality, and then from there, going ahead and saying, all right, I've got the resources, I've got the know-how, now I got to take action.
So I love that. I think it's education and action. I think those paired go a really long way. And listening to your story, so you had the long-term rentals, and then you kind of pivoted into short-term rentals. And I think a lot of that comes with the education and action. So how do you know when to pivot? Because I think that's like the $1 million question. It's like some people jump into a niche at the wrong time or in the wrong cycle. So how do you figure that out for somebody who's new or somebody that's, just trying to get in, and take action?
Yeah. I think it's kind of like, let's see here. It's kind of like riding a bike, right? Well, maybe you got your training wheels first, and you're kind of pedaling through, right? And you've got some guidance a little bit with those training wheels, but when you start taking those off and you start learning how to ride a bike and start pedaling a little bit faster, you're probably gonna fall, and there's gonna be times when you will fall, and you will fall, you will fail, right? With whatever you will put yourself into. And I think being brave enough to go ahead and understand that, like, whatever you will pursue, you will fail at doing or fail at some of the steps, but it's about being brave enough to overcome that and to like stand back up and get back on that bike and keep pedaling forward. I think that's a huge step right there. And I think really being able to kind of overcome that fear, knowing that like whatever you're going to get yourself into, you may fail, but you'll learn a lot from it. You'll take those lessons learned and kind of keep moving forward. When I first bought my long-term rentals out in Chicago, all right, that's about 2,000 miles away. And so in Chicago, I was like, well, I didn't really know anyone out there, but I'm going to look at the numbers and see like if this makes sense, if this works out. Real estate investing, this is interesting. I've been house hacking, but out of state investing is a whole nother world. And I've had family and friends tell me, it's like, hey man, that sounds risky. Like how can you not see the property that you'll be investing in? But I'm like, you know what? We have something powerful in our hands that we didn't have back in the day, right? That maybe my parents didn't have back in the day, or other people didn't have back in the day. We have this amazing thing in the palm of our hands here, where you can actually go walk the property virtually, like 20 times before even like seeing it, and FaceTiming with your agent, FaceTiming with your inspector, FaceTiming with like whoever else. Like you can go ahead and actually see what's going on out there. And so that's the power of technology today. And so, take advantage of that. That kind of helps overcome that fear, right? Now that you bridge that gap between the unknown, because now you have the technology to go ahead and do so.
Yeah, no, that's great. And, it's funny. It's one of the things you said earlier, which, you said something about you want to first, ride the bike. And when you ride a bike, you're going to fall, right? But you're going to get back up. So, I have 10 affirmations on my son's wall, right? Every morning, I read it with him, right? And one of the affirmations is, if I fall, I will get back up again, because it's always if you're going to fall.
Love that.
Yeah. But the big thing here really is how you get back up and go back at it, so I'm happy that you shared that. And, also I'm happy that you shared, just for the listeners, for those that's listening, I know you mentioned you got in your hand, he's talking about his cell phone, right? And being able to sit there and FaceTime, walk properties, just using some of the internet tools and all that good stuff means, so much, because I just was out teaching short-term rentals to about 25 people. And one lady just was like, couldn't understand how she could not invest, how she can invest outside of her backyard, and I think at the end kind of opened their eyes, kind of using some of the tools and things that you mentioned. So I know you mentioned that you're big on reading, right? Because education comes first, and then action to the education come next. What books are have you read that you would suggest that are good ones to, get your mindset in the right manner to take action?
Yeah, let's see here. For mindset books, yeah, I'm a big personal finance, and obviously, real estate, um, real estate as well. And so, I think a lot of the books that first really got me into this mindset was, and I know this is cliche, a lot of people may say Rich Dad Poor Dad, but honestly, that was the first book that I read. Yeah, I mean, during my W-2, I'm like driving out hours to like some remote places. And I'm like, 3 hours one way over to like, let's say Blythe, which is like the armpit of California. All right. Um, and like driving out there, checking out some, some stuff for work. And I'm driving out there and I'm like, let me read this book. Cause like apparently online, a lot of people are saying this book is, a huge thing. And reading that just, I think I read it like 3 times over, the first time. And so, kind of put myself into that mindset. I think another book, especially with personal finance that I enjoy reading, was Your Money, Your Life by Vicki Robbins. I think that's a great personal finance book, along with The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. And in terms of when you talk about mindset, you also got to talk about habits, right? And the kind of habits that you put forth. So I think there's that book, the 7 habits,
Highly successful.
the 7 high of effectively, yeah, right.
Yeah.
I got to look it up.
Stephen Covey.
Yeah, but like
7 highly.
something like that.
Yeah.
Cat. But anyway, yeah, that was a great book, and highly effective people use or something like that to that sense. But I think that was a great book as well. So yeah, a lot of these personal finance books and these mindset books were really great. I got to throw in the one thing also. Sorry, yeah, that was another great book. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, just I know you have kind of like this like finance sort of interest and background as far as like what you've studied, and maybe go into like the differences between Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and like the David Ramsey approach, and like how you've incorporated both, and kind of like what you've done, just like from like paying off loans to even like buying a portfolio of short within your portfolio of rentals that you have.
That's right. I am actually a big fan of Dave Ramsey, right? I believe that Dave Ramsey has helped millions of people in the nation because of the lack of financial education that the majority of Americans go through. He's actually been able to help millions of people get out of debt. And I think with that basic financial education that he has, I think a lot of people can get through some of the hardships, right? And understanding of like what personal finance is. The difference between Dave Ramsey and Rob Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad really is leveraging debt. And my take is all these books that you read, all these things that you're listening to, one single approach may not fit your life, your personality, your goals at that time, right? Because at different points in your life, you're going to have different needs and different wants, right? So you're going to have to choose and pick the best things from Rich Dad Poor Dad, the best things from Dave Ramsey's approach, and make it your own. And that's really what my wife and I did. And we went ahead and really utilized that approach. And we had our long-term rentals at the time included our house hack, the leveraging debt portion, but we went ahead and utilized Dave Ramsey's approach, as well as, Your Money, Your Life, financial independence, retirement, the FIRE movement community's approach in tackling some of the bad debt. And this includes the $147,000 student loan debt that my wife and I had. And we put a focus on it attacked it head on, and we were able to pay it off in 14 months. Yeah.
Hey, so listen, and I think for me, hopefully people don't sit here and throw snowballs at me or anything like that for what I'm about to say. But I don't think there's a right or wrong. Like Dave Ramsey, he got a way that is successful if you follow it, right? And then you have, Robert Kiyosaki, he got a way where if you follow his way, it's successful. So it's really what you just said. You have to sit there and figure out which one, or a hybrid of both, that works for you. But dude, we're not going to brush through, we just attacked this $147,000. The guy, no, we're not going to brush through that. We're going to sit here for a little bit because student loans is an issue with this country, right? Like a lot of people go to school, get this fantastic education. They sit here and get this debt, right? The student loan debt, $147,000 probably sounds about right, for the average individual. And then they're just struggling from there. So let's just dive into that a little more. Can you give just some of the things you and your wife actually did to sit there and tackle that $147,000 of debt within 14 months?
Absolutely. Okay. So getting into this topic here, let's talk about the three biggest things that Americans today, the biggest three expenses that Americans today have. Number one is housing. Number two is food. And number three is transportation, like your vehicle, right? So housing, number one. My wife and I wanted to go ahead and attack these three biggest expenses. Okay, we have our income. We got to create a budget now, and creating the budget is really the first step, right? But in our budget, we were looking and tracking all our expenses. We use a couple, there's apps out there. There's Mint app. There's You Need a Budget app as well, or YNAB. There's a couple of software, free apps out there that you can use to kind of keep track of your budget. When we went ahead and did that, we took a look at our top three big expenses, which were housing and food and our auto expenses. So for housing, we tackled that head on. Again, we were house hacking. So that completely helped our housing expense, right? We were literally not paying for housing because we had other people paying for our housing by house hacking. And for those of you who don't know what house hacking is, essentially you can, buy a property, you can, or a multifamily, you can live in one room and rent out the other three rooms, which is what we did. Or for others, maybe they buy a duplex or triplex. You can live in one unit and rent out the others. And that's a huge way of lowering your housing expense. I think housing expense is 33% of your total expenses for the majority of Americans today. So we tackle it head on using house hacking. Number two is auto expenses, right? So my wife and I, we actually bought our cars cash. Okay, we went to a auto auction in Ontario and Corona, right? And we went to a this auction, and there people are bidding for these vehicles. So typically the way these auto auctions work, they'll open it up on Sundays, the auction. Saturday, you can actually go out there and take a look at the vehicles. You can actually turn it on and listen to it. You can bring a mechanic friend with you as well. I brought my dad with me, and my wife and I, we went out over there, and we would kind of turn on the engine. You can't drive it, but you can look up the VIN number. And then she and I, we picked our top 5-10 cars, and then that night looked it up online. Are they salvaged? What's their title look like? Is it clean? Okay. And then the next day, you got your 10. Now it's time to start bidding, and it's kind of scary, right? Bidding for a car, okay? Because they're talking fast. There's people out there who are actually flipping cars, right? But I made friends with some of those mechanics, and listening to them as they talk about a car, asking, nudging them and asking them, hey, what do you think about this vehicle right here? Anyway, so they're doing the auction, and you're just making sure you set a price point that you're not going above that for each vehicle, right? You're looking at, the Kelley Blue Book. You're seeing how much it may cost for that year, for that model. And then, and then so we were able to buy, for example, a car, the recently one that we had, 2011 Honda CRV for $5,000 or $6,000. Sorry.
Mhm.
And so, this is me coming from another car that I purchased beforehand. It was a 2007 Toyota Corolla, and people always told me like, hey, Vinci, you got all these properties now, you got all these things, like, what you doing? Like, you should get a new car. And I'm like, all right, I'll get a new car. And this is already like this. We just bought that 2 years ago, 2020. And they're like, all right, I'll get a new car. So from a 2007 Toyota Corolla, I ended up buying a 2011, a Honda CRV. Hey, to me, that's a new car. All right. And I'm okay with that. So my wife and I, we made this, these intentional steps to go ahead and budget and go ahead and, keep our cost of living low, but also make sure we didn't have any kind of like debt, like these auto loans. Right. So that's step number 2, right? Or expense number 2. Expense number 3 was food and groceries. We set a budget for that as well. And back in, 2018, 19, when we were, paying off this huge student loan debt, we budgeted ourselves. So I think it was like 100 a week for food.
Wow.
And today that's kind of like, that's maybe that's a little low, right?
Bruh.
But, yeah. No, it was crazy. It was like 100 a week, and then we only allowed ourselves like to spend $30 outside of groceries each person on food. Like if you wanted to have lunch, with your coworkers or whatever, $30 per person per week, $100 total for the both of us for groceries. And we made it work, man, for 14 months. That's how we were able to pay off all those all that loans. Yeah.
Wow, like that's super amazing. I love how you broke it all down, and you think about housing, food, transportation, and nobody ever thinks about that. Nobody sets a budget. Nobody uses Mint. So I think that's like a great model to use. One, to pay down debt, to save money, to set yourself up. And I know with Dave Ramsey, a lot of it is like controlling expenses. And how do you decide how I'm going to increase my income and create extra streams of income? So maybe you can talk a little bit about that and how you've now transitioned to kind of where you are today.
Absolutely. I think that, I realized like, having student loan debt, it's one of those debts, like even if you declare bankruptcy, your student loan debt will not go away, right? So my wife and I realized that in order for us to tackle this debt, we really had to put everything we had into paying it off as soon as we could. Our W-2 income, in your W-2, we're just continuously trying to strive for like maybe like going up the ranks or whatnot within the companies, our own separate companies. But we also did a lot of overtime. I also did tutoring at that time. So I actually tutored kids. And this is something that one of the things that I'm pretty passionate about. I'm pretty passionate about helping young students get into STEM, which as science, technology, engineering, mathematics, right? Or STEAM now, as they call it, because I think they're trying to add the arts in there. And so there is a limited amount of STEM academies across the U.S., right? Specifically also here in Southern California. So what I began to do was I began to actually tutor grade school kids who wanted to get into STEM academies. And I did not know there were actual academies dedicated to just STEM. And they start them at third or fourth grade. And so I was tutoring a lot of like second graders. Okay. They have to like take a test in order for them to get into the STEM academy. So I had this one student that I found, and her parents asked me to tutor them, math, reading, history, you name it, to prepare for this exam to get into the STEM academy. And honestly, this little girl was probably one of the most smartest students I've ever had. She could do math in Spanish, okay? And she's okay. Her parents, they're white, okay? They speak completely English. They don't know any Spanish at all. Their daughter can speak Spanish fluently, okay?
Wow.
Because I think they were like in this other school, and so I was trying to teach her how to do math in English because like for some reason it wasn't like she had to reverse it around, and she was actually struggling, so that's why they wanted to hire a tutor. But anyway, she was able to get through that. She passed the STEM Academy exam to get into there, and her mom and her dad referred me to a bunch of other parents. And next thing I know, I was building this tutoring like business, and I had like 20 clients on top of my W-2. And I was like, okay, I can't do this all I'm gonna have to like either quit my W-2 and then do this full time or whatnot. And so, I was tutoring students, getting them into STEM academies, and even then, when they were already in there, kind of like continuing helping them, tutoring them. And so, yeah, all that money, we just poured it all into our student debt and made sure that that was all taken care of and paid off, while strictly sticking to our budget and expenses, And so, we had a goal to do this within 2 or 3 years, but we were able to do it in 14 months. And our 14th month was February of 2020. So everybody knows what happened March that month of that year, right? That's when COVID just hit. And then my wife and I were looking at each other, we're like, should we have just paid off like all this student debt? Because like now the world had stopped, right? But you know what? That was the best opportunity ever, because as you guys know, everything just skyrocketed. Stocks, real estate, crypto, blah, blah, blah. 2020 was the year we had all our debt paid off that February, and we began to focus, okay, now we can get back into business. What's the next real estate venture that we should get into? And that's when we got into short-term rentals.
Fantastic. Yeah. Listen, I mean, let's talk about that, man. So, so you went through this huge discipline stage, you and your wife, right? Because that's big time disciplining yourself on saying, hey, we're going to sit there and feed ourselves on $100 budget a week for food. And, and in enjoyment, we're going to give ourselves as a $30 a week enjoyment to go out with coworkers, right? How did that discipline of those 14 months, did you carry that discipline into your next, I guess, 14 months or whatever, so you can sit there and have the money to invest into the short-term rentals?
Yeah. So, we began, I think everyone and their moms began investing in like stocks and crypto in 2020, right? Just kind of dabbling in it a little bit. And I think some of the discipline that we had now with paying off all this debt, now all of that income was 100% going back to us. So we're like, wait a minute, now we don't have to pay off like almost like 8 to 10 grand a month in some of this student loan debt. Now it's coming into our savings. Well, we got to put it somewhere. Like, we got to look around and put it somewhere. And we began putting into some stocks, putting into some crypto. But for me, real estate was always something that I wanted to put into. And it was kind of scary though, because, people didn't know, our housing price is going to go down, or are they going to go up? And as we all know now, it all went up. I mean, interest rates went like way down. And I began listening to, YouTube and checking out this thing called Airbnbs, and began looking into these two markets, Joshua Tree and the Great Smoky Mountains. And, just like some of your other guests on your podcast here talking about the Smokies, like, where's Tennessee? I could even point it on the map, right? But apparently it's like the best place to go invest. And I can thank Alex for that, for pointing me to the Smokies there. Joshua Tree was getting together with Rob Built, and Rob and I, we had like a mutual friend, a mutual connection, and he was building out there in Joshua Tree. Joshua Tree was one of the areas that I would go there for work during my W-2 for projects out there, but I never saw it as a short-term rental market. But yeah, pivoting into that, I mean, taking that focus and discipline and now applying it to, okay, where can we get our best returns, right? Where will our money really make it worth it for us? And so looking into short-term rentals, comparing that with long-term rentals, we're like, wait a minute, we can like 3, 5, 10 times the amount of cash flow from a short-term rental compared to a long-term rental. Let's go check it out, And so yeah, we ended up putting offers out there, and we kept getting rejected because people were literally like throwing an arm and leg into, their offers out there. Waive all contingencies, go from there.
Yeah.
And so finally, after a couple offers in both markets, I actually opened escrow and got 2 offers accepted within 24 hours of each other, literally almost on the same day. So I got an offer in the Smokies accepted. Less than 24 hours later, I got a call about this Joshua Tree offer that I accepted. They got accepted. And my wife and I looked at each other. We're like, I don't know, maybe we should slow down. Maybe we just should do just one, right? But we're like, you know what? The numbers work. The interest rates are amazing. Let's just try this. And mind you, my wife was 4 months pregnant at this time. 4 months pregnant. And I was looking at her and looking at our daughter, right? I know who was she wasn't born yet, but I mean, like, she was holding our daughter in her belly and just kind of like, look, should we do this or not? And I'm just like, I don't know, but we've never done this kind of business before. But you know what? Just like with anything else, I think if we can do this together, just like the way that we've tackled our finances, our debt, and everything else that we've tackled in life, I think we can make it through. And if we fail, then we'll just get back up and start over and do something else or something. Obviously that went well. We closed first in the Smokies cabin. My wife and I flew out there. She was 5 months pregnant, and we set it up. Thank God that in the Smokies market, they usually come furnished, because I had no design like aptitude at all. But my wife did, so much better than myself. And so we went out there. She was 5 months pregnant. We set up our first short-term rental in the Smokies. And then boom, the following month we went live June 2021. And then boom, July 2021, we went live with our Joshua Tree property. And in that one, we had a partnership actually with a friend of mine. And in closing on these 2 properties together, starting our real estate journey. And then from there, from those first 2 to where we are today, we have, we're going to have 9 short-term rentals by the end of this month. So 18 months later, we were able to get up to 9. So yeah, it's really crazy. But I think just kind of like, doing this together with my wife, I had that courage, and then looking at my pregnant wife, looking at my future daughter, and knowing what future we wanted for her, that was my inspiration and motivation. Yeah.
So, I mean, I love that. I think you just everything that you've talked about, you took a chance, and but you guys did it collaboratively. And I think most people in your position would be like, hey, we're having a baby. Our priorities, let's slow down. I don't know if we want to take on anything more. And you just kind of went full steam ahead. And I guess I know you're like in a couple markets now. And how do you choose a market? I mean, I think recently was it Scottsdale that you like launched, and so like, walk us through like that process as far as like, now you're at a certain point, and how do you kind of scale and even like choose a market and keep going?
Yeah. So we're in 4 markets or 4 states right now. We're, I think, in 6 markets, but we are in 4 states. We're in California, right? We have Big Bear and Joshua Tree. We are in Arizona, in Scottsdale. We are in West Virginia, near the NRG, the New River Gorge National Park, and Tennessee, in the Smokies. So across those 4 states, I think, we had a lot of lessons learned from being in Tennessee, in the Smoky Mountains, being in a mountain area, and then being in the desert as well, or being near a lake like Big Bear. We love that vacation model where we like being in markets where their primary economic driver is vacation and tourism, because that brings a lot of people first and foremost. And I think in these markets, in these strong markets especially, that have been around or people were vacationing in long before Airbnb and VRBO and all these other OTAs, shows a strong market, and you kind of can't beat that. You know, we did get into a new market that's very, very new and very young. It's the latest national park in the U.S. called the New River Gorge National Park in West Virginia. And people have asked me, like, you invest in West Virginia? There's like nothing out there. I was like, you know what? I also thought, I also didn't know anything about Tennessee. but and the Smokies Mountain, and that proved me wrong. But when I looked into the foundation, and the numbers out in these markets, and the other operators who are currently out there, I loved every aspect of it. And so I went ahead and dived into it. I think trying to find your market, especially a new market, can be daunting and scary. But again, I talked about this earlier, right? You have something in the palm of your hand that can literally connect you with other people in that market. There's Facebook groups, there's, chats. You can go ahead and visit the property virtually, from 2,500 miles away. And so being able to leverage technology, being able to connect with other people in those markets and like getting their point of view about it was very helpful. So yeah, that's really what we ended up doing. And, we're looking to expand in more markets and kind of help, build our portfolio, our national portfolio, so to speak. But with that in mind, it's all about balance, right? I mean, I have a 16-month-old now. So, being able to kind of like, I call it newborn baby and newborn business, right? You got a newborn, but you also got a new business. So we call it newborn business. And so learning how to balance all that is truly key. So, being a dad, being a business owner, trying to expand and, navigate through this world is difficult, guys. And you guys are all dads. We're all dads here,
Yeah.
and you guys have more than one kid. So I got to take tips from y'all, and yeah, so I mean, it was hard. It was difficult, but it's doable. Communication is key, especially with your spouse. Oh my goodness. Communication is key, folks.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And you nailed it, with just expanding into those other markets. I'm happy that you shared that because so many people are so nervous and so scared, but you can use these phones for not just for texting and not just for, calling your girlfriend or your boyfriend or any of your friends. You can use this to actually run a business. And I love the newborn baby business. That's great. That's great. That's great. That's great. But we're going to have to bring you back on. And when we bring you back on, that newborn baby business is going to be booming, booming, booming. So you got to tell us about that as it gets older, man. So with that being said, we have a question we want to ask you. What does find your freedom means to you?
Finding your freedom. You guys remember that, this is a tangent here, but you guys recall, is it Mel Gibson's, when he shouts freedom? Yeah, it's always something that my, I don't know why, but I grew up like listening to that as my dad would always like say freedom. Finding your freedom to me really means having time freedom, having the option to work a W-2 or 9-to-5 job and being able to immerse yourself in a position mentally, spiritually, physically to be present with your family, your loved ones, and with yourself. I think especially with the pandemic, a lot of people, began to lift up that term mental health. Because before, a lot of people talk about health as in just physical health. But I think, especially having a kid now, mental health is so crucial to everything that we do in our business and in our personal lives. And so I think finding your freedom is really about finding that balance to navigate through all of life all of the things that life will throw at you, and being able to balance your physical, mental, and spiritual health, really. And with every decision that we make, with our business and our lives, we try to make sure that, health is at the first and foremost, whether it's spiritual. Again, I'm a Christian. I'm a big believer of community and going to church. So we try to focus on that to help build our spiritual health. As for physical health, I can definitely do a lot more of that. Okay. But my wife does encourage me to do so. And then as for mental health, taking your me time and your us time, is extremely important as well. And, people say like, you can go, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Right. Mm-hmm. I'm a true believer of that. I don't think we would have been able to scale our business to where it is today without the partnerships and the people that we surrounded ourselves with. We currently have 22.5 million assets under management, for our real estate portfolio. That includes long-term rentals, short-term rentals, and multifamily. I think that biggest piece over the past year was multifamily was another thing that we wanted to get into. But we wouldn't have been able to do all of this without the help of others, because you can't do it all yourselves. So first and foremost, that mental health is key. It's important. Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. Health is wealth. Health is wealth. And I guess, for people who want to connect with you, how do they find you?
You can find me on Instagram or Facebook. It's Vinci Sevilla Jr. At Vinci _Sevilla _Jr. Find me on there. We should reach out to me anytime.
All right, man. All right, so this is coming to a close here, and when we come to a close here, because we don't have guests on our show, everyone on our show are friends. So what we want to do this big boom session, right? So in a uniform manner, we all count to 1, 2, 3, they go boom. Now the objective here is to sit there and bust some speakers out and rattle some air drums. All right. So that means that we got to fill up those lungs and go for it. All right, fellas, let me know if y'all ready.
Do it.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right, cool. I'm going to count to 3. We're going to go boom. All right. 1, 2, 3. Boom. Awesome. Check this out. We just had an amazing show. And what we talked about was balance. We talked about mental health, physical health, and spiritual health. And this is one of the shows that you really want to tune in because there is so much discipline involved to get to where you want to go. If people are doing it, this is a real life situation here where people are doing and you can do it too. So with that being said, we always got something to help you out. So easily downloadable, go to findyourfreedomrei.com/freedom kit. Once again, findyourfreedomrei.com/freedom kit is just a gift that we want to give to you that's going to absolutely change your mindset and change your life. Now, when you listen to this episode, make sure you give a 5-star honest review because that's the way that we're able to give you more and more and more episodes like this. Now, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you share this with your mother, your brother, your sister, your cousin, your aunt, your uncle, all your coworkers, even the ones you don't like. Share it with them as well. Until the next episode, talk to you soon. Peace.
Thanks for listening to Find Your Freedom. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. While you're at it, please help us spread the word by leaving a rating and review and sharing the podcast with friends, family, and colleagues. Until next time, get out there and find your freedom.